Hi guys, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. What you see in the vise is a classic swimming nymph inspired by Lucian from Troutlines. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise then is a Hanak H230 barbless hook. This one's at size 10, it's on a medium wire and it's finished in black nickel. Now the thread I'm going to be using today is from Simplify. It's nano silk at 50D or 12 aught if you like, and as you can see it's a red nano silk. Now as always with the nano silks, we're going to get a little bit of super glue onto the shank of our hook just to help it adhere to the nice shiny black nickel. So I've used my thread to spread the super glue up and down the shank, and I'm going to get a bed of thread all the way down to just past the point of the fly. And come on with my scissors and take away my waste. Now you could use pheasant tail for your tail, but what I find is when you're fishing with these kind of flies, pheasant tail doesn't survive contact particularly well. Once a fish has hit it a couple of times, the pheasant tail tends to shear off. So what I like to use is just a cock hackle. I take some fibres off, probably about a dozen or so. If you bring it out at a 90-degree angle from the stem and rip it away, it should marry the tips up, and just about marry the tips up, and then you can measure what length you want. I want mine just shy the length of the shank of the hook. I'm going to get a couple of turns just to hold that into place, and then I'm going to come in with my scissors and just, excuse my fingers, take away some of that bulk at the end. Not all of it. I want to try and maintain a nice even body up to the thorax area. So just make sure that's in place. I've tied something else in here. I think it's maybe a little bit of the nano silk. I'll just come in with my scissors and remove it. That's better. Okay, so far so good. Next thing we want to do is add our rib. And what I'm using is some copper wire. This is from Simplify, and it is at 0.01 millimeters, nice and thin, and it's only to protect the body. So I'll bring that in to the end. Now next, for the body material, I'm using some pheasant tail. This one's been dyed actually, and you can see it's kind of like a rusty colour, which is what I want for this particular pattern. If you don't have a rusty colour, I'm sure a natural pheasant tail fibre will be just as effective. It's more the profile of this nymph, I think, than the colour. I think it would work quite well in black as well. Next then, what I want to do next is get a few extra wraps just in at the front of the fly, and then using my hackle pliers I'm going to just grab the thick end of the pheasant tail. Now as I bring this round, I'm able to avoid the hook point, and that's one of the beauties of doing it this way. You can see exactly where the hook point is. Sometimes when you're doing it just hand over hand, you've got a tendency to catch that hook point, and certainly with pheasant tail it often breaks off if you've made contact with the hook point. So as I get up near the thorax area, my extra wraps that I put in have not quite come to the end. I'm just going to bring it back 2 or 3 turns, and then I can come over and catch that in with a few turns. 2 or 3 should do it. Get a couple of turns in front, and then you can either break that off if you're feeling brave, or come in with your scissors like a coward like I just did. Okay, so we've now brought our body over. That's looking pretty good. With the rib, I'm going to come in the opposite direction, and I want to keep it nice and even. I'm looking to get about 4 turns of the wire before I hit the thorax. Now, once you've come up to the thorax area, come over with your thread, 2 or 3 turns in front, and then you can take that away. Now with the pheasant tail, I always like to come much further up than is necessary, and this gives me leeway to make the thorax as big or small as I like. So the next thing I want to do is catch in my thorax cover, and what I'm using is some Mirage Iris, and as you can see it's like a pearl-lucent thorax cover that I'm going to use here. Now I have got a bit that I've cut off already, and before I catch it in, I'm just going to add a little bit of wax to the thread. This just helps grip your materials. So lay that on top and bring that over. Now the thorax on this is going to be quite big, not huge but quite big. So I would say about 1/3 of the size of the body. I'll bring that back out the way. It won't behave. Let's wrap it round a couple of times. There we go. The next thing I want to do then is get my thorax material, and what I'm using is from Fritz and Flash. Alan Hoggs kindly sent me a pack of his latest dubbing, and this one is the Rusty Orange UV Buggy. It's quite an interesting dub. It's got blacks and browns, and I'll show up to the camera. I don't know how well you'll see it as it is, but you can see there's little UV fibres through it, and it's quite interesting. So gives you a really nice effect on your fly. Now while I've been wittering on, you'll notice my thread has been spinning anti-clockwise, which is going to make it rather easy for me to come in with my dubbing needle and split the thread. And then I can grab my dubbing. The thorax cover's trying to get on the act. Just move that out of the way and insert the material. Now I could have just dubbed this on and that would have worked fine, but what I find is if you put it into a dubbing loop, you just, when you start pulling out the fibres, you get much longer fibres than if you just dub it on by hand. So this is the way I've done it. I mean, if you don't want to do it this way, I'm sure that just dubbing it on as you would normally will work just as effectively. Now, once I've got this, I want to just thin out the bulk. Don't want it too bulky. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in loose turns all the way up, then I'm going to go back. This time, when I bring my dubbing loop over, I'm going to bring everything back out the way. A couple of turns in the front, and then I'm simply going to bring my thorax cover over the top here and get a couple of turns in at the eye of the hook. Now, as I said, this fly was originally not the exact copy, but originally where I've got the inspiration from it is a fly tied by Lucien Lesage, who is the man behind Troutlines. It's an amazing shop. They've got lots of lovely fly tying materials in there. I could spend a good couple of hours going through that. But what he used, and this is the interesting thing I like about this fly. So at this point, he's added a little bit of CDC. And what CDC does, now I've used it a lot on my river bugs. When I'm tying river bugs, I use CDC to trap air bubbles, which often gives the fly a really lifelike look to it. So what I've done is I've just clipped the centre stem of the CDC. I'm going to take that away. And the next thing I want to do is come in both sides, catch in the CDC with my thumb and forefinger in my left hand, Then I'm going to come over the top 2 or 3 turns to hold that into place. Then I'm going to bring the CDC feather back up over the thorax cover and then start to build the head of the fly. Now, as I'm building the head, I've caught in a little fibre there, which I'll just try and get rid of. Doesn't want to go. And then I can come in with my whip finish tool like so. Now this fly, oh, just broke away there. This fly reminds me very much of a cruncher, but variety is the spice of life, as they say. So where is my dubbing brush? I want to just come in, peel out some of that dubbing. And I don't know about you, but I certainly find with nymphs, especially hare's ears, the scruffier they get, the more effective they become. I don't know whether it's they look more natural in the water, but when they're wet, they just look the part, look like an insect. So to finish off, I'm going to use some Solaris Bone Dry. Just touch onto the head. Try not to catch in all them fibres. It is a bushy beastie. And I think you only need one coat really. It's not a pretty fly. It's not going to win any prizes for design, but I think it's going to be a very effective trout catcher. Because it's so bulky, it will sink very slowly in the water column as well, and it may be an ideal fly if you're fishing the washing line. I hope you had some use out of that, and I'll see you all next time.